this video, I'm going to share with you my entire colour pencil drawing process from start to finish so that you can start your colour pencil drawings with more confidence and just have so much more fun instead of feeling overwhelmed and frustrated and running into lots of mistakes. There are going to be so many juicy tips in this video, and that's why I have created some cheat sheets and a checklist to go along with this video that you can download. There's a link to it in the description, completely free. It includes a checklist of basically everything that I do before I start my colour pencil drawings, and so that I run into way less mistakes. And it also has cheat sheets for all of my favourite colour pencil techniques that make my drawings way more realistic, including how I blend my colour pencil drawings and also my different texturing techniques to get those really fine, realistic details. But anyway, let's get started. The first step that I do in any colour pencil drawing is the sketch, but I'm not going to go through how I sketch in this video. I'm going to save this sketching tutorial for another lesson because that's our whole topic in itself. But that is one of the first things that I do whenever I'm doing a colour pencil drawing, and I just use graphite. Now, I am a big believer that you don't have to have perfect colours for your colour pencil drawings as long as you get the value spot on. And value basically means the lightness or darkness of your colours. And that's why before I dive in with my colours, I actually like to create a black and white version of my reference, and I like to do this really small value thumbnail sketch and basically just take a black colour pencil or anything like that and just do a very quick sketch and sort of establish where all of the different values are in your subject, so that when it comes to colour you can also keep the values at the forefront of your mind. And I even like to sort of swatch out all of the different values in the reference to get a clear picture of where they are and the sort of range of values I need to cover in my colour pencil drawing. And it also helps me when it comes to picking colours know what values I need to make sure each colour matches. We've got our sketch down and we've really looked at our reference or our subject and picked out where the different values are, and even done that quick thumbnail study to get a clear idea and map out where our light should be and where our darker values should be in our drawing. And so now that we've got that in like the front of our mind, we can now dive into picking our colours. So let me show you my process for how I picked colours for this drawing. So before we start colouring in this flower, the next thing we've got to do is actually pick which colours we're going to use for this project. And you can see that I've started off by swatching all of the main colours that I can see in this reference. And you can do this yourself using Microsoft Paint, which is totally free. I use Photoshop for this. And this is really great because you're able to pick the main colours and create these large swatches to just get a really quick idea of the different colours you need to include in your drawing. And look, it gives you a really nice idea if you go from light to dark, all of the different values you need to hit. And we can see that we're going from really light tones to really dark shadows down here. So our colours need to make sure that they range between these values. I basically gathered a whole ton of my pencils from my Faber-Castell Polychromos set. I have the 120 set, and I basically just got all of the colours that I thought could work for these swatches. And you can see there's a lot here. It's very overwhelming. And for our drawing projects, I like to actually just try and use the least amount of pencils I can to get the job done so that it's not super overwhelming, especially if you're just starting out. Looking at these tones, I can see that the light values have got more of a pinky purpley tinge to them. But then as we go down here, it's a bit more orangey, and you can really see that coming through in this part of the flower, the more orangey tones. And then with these shadows, it's more of a browny red. And then for the greens, we can see that the light green is quite muted. And what I mean by that is it's not super vibrant, it's quite a desaturated type of green. And then we've got a very vibrant green here for our mid-tones, and then some darker greens, and even this darkest colour looks almost black. And then for the stem, we've got more of a brown colour. We're going to start by picking the colours for these three here. And I'm going to actually work on all of these in one go. And the reason for that is because a lot of the time when we are working between these different values, we're going to actually use the same colors. We're not going to use completely different colors for all of these. So I've grouped together all of the pencils that I think could work for potentially these three colors, and I'm just going to swatch them out, see what I'm working with. A lot of the time the colors look a bit different to the actual pencil. So we're just going to do a quick swatch of them, and I'm making sure to keep them in this order so that I know which is which, and so they don't get all muddled up. And another color that I'm adding on is like a very light gray, because I thought that that could work potentially for this color here, for these that are a bit more muted. So when I swatch these, I've used just a normal amount of pressure, but we've got to remember that you can do light pressure, so you can get lighter versions of each of these colors, or you could apply lots of pressure and get dark versions of these colors. Now, I'm not going to say the names because it doesn't matter what the names are. I just want you to go into your set of colors and just pick out all of the colors that you believe out of your set can match this. First of all, I kind of like this color because that has got more of that purpley tinge to it. So I'm just going to swatch that out a bit more. I think this one could work really nice. It's like a very purpley magenta color. And I think if I pair that with this sort of cool gray, it's very light cool gray, then that can get us close enough to what we need for this color. And remember, we do not need it to be exact. Close is good enough. What is more important is making sure that you're matching the values. So I really like that for this color. Now for this one, we've got to get a bit darker and a bit more pinky. So that one could work. Also this one, both of them could work, but I think I'm going to go for this one because this has more potential to go a bit darker. And I'm just going to carry it on from here and just kind of build up a gradient. And remember I said that I want to work on these together because a lot of the time we're going to be mixing the colors. We're going to be using the same colors for multiple areas. So there we go, and I'm happy that that gets me close enough to that tone. Now moving on to this orangey color. So this is a bit darker and it is a bit more orangey. Any of these three could work really, because there are some areas that are even more orange. So I'm using this color, it's called Sanguine, and once again, I'm just continuing that gradient because we'll probably be layering it in with those other colors. And you can see this has given us a really nice version for this color. And if we want it to be a little less orangey, we could just go back in with the other color we picked. This is called Coral. And I'm just using this to go back over that orange, and you can see it gives us a lovely color that matches this one. So I've picked 4 colors here that work together really nice to create us this gradient from our light value all the way down to our more mid-tone orange. And that means I can discard all of these. So now we're going to move on to these bottom 2. I'm starting by swatching out these darker reds and then moving on to the browns. Look at how similar these are. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. All of these can get your drawing looking realistic. It's not going to make or break your drawing if you pick this red over this one, or if you use this brown over this brown, because it's value that is more important. Have you got it the correct lightness and darkness? Out of these, I believe that this red probably works better for this because it has more of that orangey tone. And for the browns, these two are probably the best. They're gonna get me a darker value. I'm gonna go with the Van Dyke Brown and just test these 2 colors together, see if they'll get me what I need for these last 2 colors. So you can see that these match these swatches pretty close. This is probably a bit more orangey, but we can always take the other color that we've picked for up here and just add a bit of that orange in, and you can see that makes it closer to that color already. So here's the final colors for this side. So you can see we haven't got a huge list of colors that we're using, just using 6 pencils. And so that's the same process that I'd then go through with the green, and I've already done that process, and I'll just kind of show you which colors I've decided on for this section and why. So the first color I chose was this one here. This is Permanent Green, and because it really matches this middle color, it's just a really nice vibrant green. And because I wanted to try and use the least amount of pencils possible, I also just swatched it really lightly with very little pressure to see how close it would get me to this one. And you can see that it's fairly close, but it's still a little bit too vibrant. So then I tried to use this grey that we've picked for the flower, and I just layered that over that green. And you can see that it mutes that green down, as well as keeping it nice and light, and it gets us much closer to that colour. So if possible, I like to overlap colours that I've used for different areas to just keep it easier. And then for these darker colours, I picked the pine green. It's a very dark sort of bluey green, so I just found the pencil in my set that matched it the closest. You can see it gets a really nice dark value. And then because this is pretty much black, all I'm going to do for that darker colour is just layer in some black, but I'm always going to finish it off with a layer of the green, the same pine green as I've used here, just to make sure it looks like a dark green and not black. And you can see we've created a really nice range of values that really closely matches those swatches. And then for this brown tone down here, well, I'm going to make it easy, and I'm just going to use the same brown that we used for the darker parts of the flower. And so here you can see all of the colors we're going to use for this drawing. I am also going to add a white in there because it's really good for blending out and lightening up some of the highlight areas. I always just love to add a white in for my drawings, but you can see that these colors are going to help us achieve this beautiful range of hues and values for our drawing. And picking your colors first and planning them out is really going to help you make sure that you are picking colors that help you achieve all ends of the value scale. Now that we've picked all of our colors, we can actually dive into drawing this flower. But can you see how we haven't dived straight into the drawing? We've actually done a lot of planning. We've created swatches of our values and even done a little study of them. And we've picked our colors by creating those swatches and really doing a process of elimination to pick the best colors for this drawing. And just doing this little bit of planning is just going to set you up for so much success when it comes to actually building up those layers, blending and working on that final drawing, because you're not going in blind. You've basically created a plan. You've tested your colors, you know which ones are going to layer together really nicely to get the color and value that you need, and you have an idea where those different values are, how light and dark your shading should be. So now we're ready to start the final drawing. Before I start adding colour to my drawings, the first thing I always do is take a kneaded eraser and I try to lighten up my graphite sketch as much as I can without actually stopping myself being able to see the sketch. You still need to be able to see it, but just try and erase as much of that graphite as possible so that your colours don't get muddy and so that those sketch lines don't show through your colour pencil shading. And then what I'm basically doing is I'm trying to establish the shadows within the top part of the flower. So I've got that darker red colour before going in with one of those more lighter pinks, which is a great sort of base colour that I can use for the majority of the flower, but I'm not going to put it in some of those really light areas because they are really light in value and this pencil is a bit too dark. So I will leave a few bits quite white or just apply a very, very light layer of shading to these areas. And this is one technique you want to do quite a lot when you're using colour pencil, is vary your pressure on the pencil to create different values. You can actually use one pencil for many different areas just by switching up how light or heavy your pressure is. I also added a bit of that sort of pinky purpley tone before going in with this darker orangey colour that we picked to add in those more orange saturated tones within the flower. And I really like using small circular motions when I'm actually shading with my pencils. It helps get the sort of pencil lead into more bits of the paper because your paper is going to have a bit of a tooth to it. It's going to have texture. Sometimes it has a lot of texture. Sometimes your paper will be really smooth depending on what you pick. But if you've got a very textured paper, which I don't really recommend for this type of colour pencil drawing, but the more texture you have, the more you've really got to try to work that pencil into all of the nooks and crannies of the paper, which is why I like to go for a paper that is a bit more on the smooth side. It has got a little bit of texture to sort of grip onto all of these layers of colour pencils, but for the most part it's pretty smooth, and that's going to help you avoid that grainy look in your drawing and get smoother, more rich colours. Another key part of getting really rich, smooth, vibrant looking colour pencil drawings is doing lots and lots of layers. You can see here that I am going over the same area multiple times with different pencils, really building up those layers, because every layer that you add, you are basically blending it a little bit each time, and it's getting smoother and it's filling in more of the white grain of the paper, and the colours are fusing and meshing together more and more with each layer that you do. And one trick that I love doing to really blend all your layers of colour pencil together is I love going in with a really soft, waxy colour pencil. I am using the White Luminance pencil by Caran d'Ache, and this just really helps to smooth everything out and give you that really pro looking finish. You don't get any graininess, and everything just looks very smooth and polished. And then I go over the top with my pencils. At this point, I make sure that they're really sharp, because at this stage we are focusing on those final details. I like to crispen up any edges that need to be quite sharp, edges that are meant to be hard edges, and I also just add any textures or details that I need to. For example, I might add little veins to each petal. And then I also tweak any colours that I need. Is there any areas that need to be a bit more purpley toned? Any colours that need to be muted a bit more with a grey pencil? Stuff like that. So at this point, I'm checking to see if all of my values are accurate. Are there any areas that need to go a bit darker? Or is there any areas that are too dark and I need to lighten them up? So I'm looking at the values. You really want to make sure you're getting your darks as dark as they need to be. And I'm also looking to see if there's any areas that I need to define a bit more, like I said, sort of sharpen up the edges, and also any areas that need a bit of detail or texture. And then I'm going in with an electric eraser because I was feeling like I needed to add a few finer details to these petals, some of the really small petals, and I find that the electric eraser is a great tool for colour pencil drawings as well. You can use it for graphite drawings, but you can use it for your colour pencil drawings. It's a great way to lift up the colour pencil, and you can even go back over the top with a white pencil to lighten those areas up further. And then I'm just working on the shadow now, and adding shadows, especially when you are doing a subject or an object against white paper, getting in these shadows really can help with that realistic illusion of a 3D object. It just really transforms the drawing when you give it this shadow on the paper. So for this shadow, I did light layers of brown, and I made sure to lighten my pressure towards the edge of the shadow to give that illusion that it's darker right by the flower, and then it sort of blurs out. And then I blend over it with a white pencil before just making it a little bit darker in certain areas. And I even layered in some colours like green, because I find quite a lot of the time that when you look at a shadow, it's not just grey, there's a few other colours in there. Like in the reference, if you really look, there's even like a more yellow tone as well. And then I'm moving on to actually colouring in the stems and the leaves. And I'm just using those very few basic colours that we picked. And I'm starting out with that darker green and just once again establishing the shadows. I do this quite a lot with my colour pencil drawings. I find that it can be really useful to sort of get in some of those darker colours, because it can be scary going dark, especially if you're a beginner. I always find that a really big struggle with my students that I have inside my colour pencil course, the Colour Pencil Academy, is that if their drawings look a bit flat, like they're not popping and they don't have much depth, it's normally because they don't have in those darker values, and their colours they all are very light or very mid-tone. They don't have those really dark, intense, dramatic colours. And this can come a lot from fear of ruining your drawing, scared of going in with those darker layers in case you ruin it and you can't go back, you can't remove those darker colours. And I completely get it, it can be really scary, but honestly, if you practice maybe on some lower pressure drawings where you can just experiment and just practice going darker, and you will see that it makes such a massive difference to the realism in your drawings. Your drawings will have so much more depth and they will really pop. As you can see here, adding these darker values to get it to match your reference is just gonna take it to that next level. It transforms it. It really makes it stand out. So I can't stress enough how key it is to keep focusing on your values and checking that they are accurate. And that's why it's also really handy to have a black and white version of your reference on hand, just to keep checking where your darkest values are and where your lighter values are, because it's that contrast, that sort of variety of lights and darks in your drawings that will make it pop and stand out and not look just flat or cartoony. So one thing that I really want to make sure that I mention is that if I ever use black to darken up a color, for example with those dark leaves, I used a layer of black. I never like to finish on a layer of black. I always like to go over the top with the green to make sure that it looks like a dark green and not just black. So I like to sandwich the black in between my other colors just to get it darker in value. But you can also use a very dark brown or like a really dark navy blue as well to try and get it darker if you don't like using black. But I found that as long as you add other colours over the top of it, it doesn't make your drawing look flat or unrealistic or muddy in any way. And so you can see that I'm finishing off this drawing by smoothing out some of those lighter tones with the white pencil. And you can see how I really didn't use too many colours with this drawing. But you really don't need to use a whole bunch of different colours for your drawings. As long as you are covering the full range of values, then your drawing can look realistic. And once I add in this shadow, it's really going to just pop and transform this drawing. And I'm using the light grey for this, I'm using that brown again, and I'm even going to use a bit of black just to darken up the shadow in a couple of places. But yeah, you don't need a whole bunch of colours, and you don't even need to get your colours 100% accurate. Just focus on those values. And also focus on defining any of the edges that need to be sharp, but also leave certain edges more soft and blurry if that's what it needs to. Like for example, if I did a really hard edge for this shadow, then it wouldn't look like a shadow. The whole key to giving it the illusion that it is a shadow is to make sure that it's very soft and blurry at the edges. And so when you're doing your colour pencil drawings, it's really useful when you are sort of working on the edges to look at your reference and see, does it need to be a very crisp line, a very hard edge, or is it something that's softer and more of a gradual change? Also, one thing that I really wanted to show with this drawing is that you can create a really realistic looking drawing without using tons of different tools or different techniques. I've kept it very simple with my techniques. I've just used my pencils and paper, and I did use an eraser, but I haven't used all of the techniques that I usually use for my portrait or animal drawings. I haven't used X-Acto knives or solvent and blending pencils and indenting tools. I didn't use any of that because I wanted to show you that you can start off with a smaller set of pencils and your paper and still get really realistic looking results. Even though you can create really realistic drawings with just simple techniques like just using the pencils to blend and basically get by with minimal tools, there are so many really great techniques you can use for colour pencils that actually will give you more realistic results and faster. And I've also seen that creating really frame-worthy colour pencil drawings is something anyone can do. It's a skill set that you learn. It's not a talent that you are born with. And this skill set is exactly what I teach inside the Colour Pencil Academy, my course which basically teaches you everything you need to go from a beginner to a colour pencil artist that's creating really realistic drawings that you are proud to put on your wall. There's over 4,000 students in this course and it has got amazing reviews. So I will leave a link in the description if transforming your colour pencil skills and going to that next level is something that you are interested in. And I really built the lessons to build off of each other and start with the basics so that you're never feeling overwhelmed and you are building your skills naturally. It's all about giving you that skill set to be able to create those colour pencil drawings of your grandkids, pets, family, you know, that you want to hang on your wall or as presents to your loved ones. So if creating realistic colour pencil drawings is something that you really want to do, then check out the link in the description where you can find all the details about the Colour Pencil Academy. But thank you for watching this video. I recommend checking out this one next. It's about the colour pencil exercise that changed my life. If you are struggling with picking colours for your drawings, then this is a must watch. It's basically the ultimate colour theory guide for colour pencils. Check it out and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everybody.